Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Hello and welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth. You are either watching or listening on KGRA or YouTube, and you can continue to do so at no cost whatsoever for the next 24 or so hours. After that, you can subscribe. And if you subscribe to KGRA and use my name, Peter, as your passcode, you will receive a 30% discount. And you can just start thinking right now about what you're going to do with all that money you're going to save. Tonight's show returns us to a central mandate from the very first show on, dealing with the central subject of UFO abduction. And ironically, before we do that, we're going to take a few minutes with two friends of mine to discuss a virtual conference, a very special one that's coming up this weekend. The Skyfire Conference, which is a conference that began in 2014 that Jennifer and I were instrumental in working on, to then mark the 39th anniversary of Travis Walton's experience. And without further ado, I am going to bring on audio, Jennifer Stein, and video, Ron Janix. Ron is the founder of the Observation Deck platform and podcast. Ron has been immersed in the UFO paranormal community for many years. He is also an event producer currently focused on creating virtual events on the avatar-based platform. Jennifer Stein is, for me, one of ufology's secret weapons. Jennifer is a past Pennsylvania MUFON state director, is a state section director, has worked in developing many conferences in many places, is an outstanding documentary filmmaker, and her direct involvement in this event is Jennifer's the executive producer and director of the outstanding multi-award-winning documentary Travis, The True Story of Travis Walton, which I had the honor of being an associate producer on. So Jennifer and Ron, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Hi, Peter. Good seeing you. Appreciate you having us on.
Nice to meet you.
And Jennifer is on the road right now, so keep your eyes on the road, Jen, while you talk. And yes. By the way, where are you and where are you headed to? Dare I ask?
Well, I'm on a road trip with a good girlfriend, and I'm in somewhere in Western Pennsylvania, heading into Ohio.
Great. And Ron, where are you home based?
I'm right here in LA.
Very good. Jennifer, would you tell us some things first about the conference in general and what makes it so special before we move on to learn something about this rather unique platform that is going to be presented on?
Sure. Well, Peter, you know, we started the Skyfire Summit Conference in Snowflake, Arizona in 2014, and you were, I think, our MC for that and one of our speakers for that very first conference. And that was the 39th anniversary of Travis Walton's famous November 5th abduction. And, of course, his story is famous, being missing for 5 days. So we decided, when we were working in Roswell, I think it was, that Travis should do a conference every year because his story is as big as any of the stories around abduction and UFOs. It's a huge story because it's a complex story, both as a possible homicide, as a missing person story, and as a UFO story, as you well know. So we thought to educate the younger generations, I did the documentary, and he should screen the documentary every year and have a conference. But we love Travis, and we know that conference coordination is not his skill set. Yeah. So now what we do is we try to incorporate an anniversary event somewhere, somewhere else around his story, and we try to screen the film. And I was approached this year by Ron Janex and by Jordan Pease saying, hey, maybe we could do a virtual conference this year, and we could do it online, and we could make it international, and the potential for that could be like exponentially important. Yeah. And I'll tell you why this is so incredibly important right now, because with COVID, everyone was suddenly shut into their homes, right? And the streaming of people being able to decide what they wanted to watch and to be able to access what they wanted to watch, it meant that the Travis film suddenly started going through the roof. Like the streaming of this film in an international basis, it's now in multiple languages around the world in closed caption. As you know, Peter, it's in Japanese and it's in French and Portuguese. So this film sort of hit its debut, I think, in 2020 or 2019 with the onset of COVID. And with that, some major international debunking started on it. Yeah. And I suspect those two things are synchronistically related somewhere. So for us to now host a conference which will address some of the debunking, we'll have some of the major important people to the story on. And we'll be doing several platforms throughout the day, which I'm going to let Ron tell you the schedule because I'm Ron's guest. Ron is the one who really is the brainchild behind this and had the inspiration to do it. And I said, I am your support person. I will do whatever you can to help initiate this. And Peter, you've been very instrumental as well in getting a few of our presenters like Lee Spiegel and James Fox and Tracy Torme to join us. I think I'll stop there because I can get carried away. I'm so passionate about it.
Well, before I turn it over to Ron, I also want to give a shout out to our friend Jordan Pease, who is in Oregon right now and also working so hard to make this conference the success it very much deserves to be. And Absolutely. Just to say, it was wonderful seeing you again, Jordan, 2 weeks ago tomorrow in Washington, D.C. And Ron, why don't you pick it up from there? What makes the Observation Deck platform so different than just having another virtual conference?
Well, instead of just talking on sort of a Zoom call that we're on now, where it's just talking heads like this platform, you actually have an avatar. You build your own avatar that looks like you, and you move around an actual space in a 3D virtual reality kind of a thing, and it's recreating the atmosphere of a conference. Like if you went to the Contact in the Desert, there'd be booths, there'd be halls, there'd be different vendor areas, there'd be a big auditorium. We have all of those things digitally recreated.
And a bar where you could walk in
and
and
a bar.
People and talk to people.
Yes, you can have a virtual beer with someone around the world. Exactly. So that's the difference here. You're recreating that space. You can interact with the people, and then the speakers will come out and they'll hang out with you. And it gives you a chance to hang out with these people from all around the world digitally. And it's a lot more fun because you have an avatar and you physically walk through the space just like you would in real life. Okay, I want to take a break now. Okay, I want to go over here now. It's fantastic. We even have a beach. You can go down to the beach and get out of this for 5 minutes. It's a very unique experience, and it makes the whole thing more conducive for interaction with other people and the speakers. And as Jen mentioned there, there's been a little bit of talk about hoaxes and that maybe this story's not so legit. We've got a lot of things lined up to show that it is. I did a 2-hour interview last weekend with Mike Rogers, who was the crew chief on this, as you know, Peter. Yes. And he pretty much came full on clean and set the record straight. So we're going to play some of that. We've got brand new footage. We've got a couple of the fellow eyewitnesses with Travis that still 46 years later stick to the exact same story.
Yep. And of course, we will have Travis as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's going to take questions from the audience.
And we're also going to have a film panel. We're going to have a filmmakers panel, or we're going to have an investigators panel. I mean, it's going to be broken up into, like, I think 2-hour sessions. Is that right, Ron?
Yeah, there's 3 different panels. Investigator panel, talk about the different evidence that we found, the different measurements of the trees and things like that. The witness panel, the people that were actually there at the time or right after and picked up Travis. And then a filmmaker panel, people like Jennifer Stein, who put this whole thing together and has delved into this case, as well as yourself, Peter. And that's going to be very revealing. Tracy Torme, James Fox. It's going to be really great having them give their perspective on this case.
I have a question.
I'll also jump in and add, if I can, that we're actually going to screen the documentary at the end of the day as well. If people haven't seen it, we'll actually show it as part of the day. And we're also going to show in the beginning a 38-minute piece that very few people have seen. A few people in Phoenix MUFON have seen it last year. But I'm sort of working on a new compendium film, and we'll see the first 38 minutes of that, which has a lot of Travis's older brother, Don, talking about him. It's a lot of Chuck Ellison speaking, who was the first police officer on the scene. So there are some inside, in-depth stories that are coming out and being revealed that haven't been shown before.
And Don Walton will be here live as well, Peter.
Yeah, and as I remember, Pacific Standard Time, we begin at 8 and we run through until 4.
And then people are going to stay with their avatars, go to the beach, hang out, watch the movie. Then it's relax time.
One last question for you guys. I think considering the package that this is, and the fact that really only the tech people are being paid for this, all the rest of us are volunteering our time and our energy. Is that special discount still in effect until the end of today, or is it now the price changed?
It's through Wednesday. We have something called our website's called theobservationdk.com for the observation deck. And so it's TOD Save 50. TOD SAVE, all caps 50. You get half off, which means you get into this event for $10. 17 speakers.
That's ridiculous as what it is, and as good as it gets. I'm going to cut you both off there. Thank you both so much for your hard work on this. I, of course, will be there. I'm working, and look forward to seeing many of our Meanwhile Here on Earth audience joining us, please.
We appreciate it. We'll see you on Saturday, Peter. Looking forward to seeing you there, buddy. Thanks again.
Bye for now, you guys. Safe traveling, Jen. Have a great time.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, no kidding, though. This is going to be a remarkable conference, and I am very glad that Ron did mention that we are going to be including a good part of an extraordinary, completely exclusive interview with Mike Rogers, correcting a fair amount of information that he has put out over this past year that has questioned the original account. Otherwise, what can I say? Join us. And without further ado, let me bring on our 2 actual guests for the night and thank them for their patience. Mike Stevens is founder of Granite Sky and a New Hampshire native, born and bred. When not helping others with their experiences, you can often find him in the forests and mountains of the state, camping and hiking. Mike hopes to combine his simple New England values with his own experiences to give people a positive new outlook on the phenomena. Mike is a seasoned paranormal investigator and researcher. He has worked to change the stigma attached to the abduction phenomena by promoting public awareness of the subject and by encouraging and supporting other experiencers. He was the initiating force behind the New Hampshire historical marker for Betty and Barney Hill's UFO encounter, and that in itself is quite historic. Mike has been interviewed in the past by newspapers, television, and radio about his involvement in the paranormal and UFO communities locally as well as internationally. Mike has become a trusted source for New Hampshire's UFO history. His experiences started at about the age of 3 and have been ongoing ever since. The experiences have come in a variety of forms and demeanors. Dealing with his own experiences has led him to help other experiences overcome their trauma as well as his own. Nomar Slevik is an independent creator, writer, researcher, and investigator in numerous aspects of the paranormal. He delights in sharing stories through different mediums, such as books, documentaries, and podcasts. Slevik has been fascinated by all the things paranormal since childhood, beginning with a UFO encounter at 4 years of age. Now his life's passion has been to research, investigate, write, and share otherworldly encounters from everyday people in a way that conveys the human element of profoundly strange encounters. Norm's other books are UFOs Over Maine, Otherworldly Encounters, and his newest, just published in September, We Only Come Out at Night, a collection of fictional short horror stories. One link for all these works is allmylinks.com/Slevik, and that's Slevik. And his online store is slevikstore.company.site/. And Mike Stevens, Norm Slevik, a belated but sincere welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Peter, such an honor to be here. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Peter. So good to see your face again.
You too, my brother. Mike and I have been friends for years, and I've gotten to know Norm indirectly through Mike and through reading this here book, which I have enjoyed thoroughly. And we're going to follow a somewhat different format tonight than the one that we usually do, in that this is usually a highly illustrated radio show, something of an oxymoron, but not in modern times. Tonight, it's going to be with words and the actual stories themselves. So, Norm, I'd like to start out with a question for you, which is how you met Mike, for starters, became engaged enough in his account of his life of non-standard experiences, and then made the commitment to writing a book about them, and how you proceeded on that. As an author, I'm always interested in people's work method.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and before we Nomar, quick. I know it comes up as a typo. It's actually Nomar, not Norm, and I know. So I want to give him full credit.
Thank you.
Because he did the same for me, and I know nobody meant any disrespect, but. So.
I'm never going to
continue as you would.
I was going to say I may have meant disrespect, but continue on. Whatever your name is.
That's amazing that all that just happened. All right. So Mike and I, we met about 4 years ago. Mike was a part of what's called the KRI Center for Consciousness Studies. That was a location in New Hampshire, where all sorts of different types of meetings and presentations would take place, discussing the paranormal in various aspects. So I had gone down there at one point, and Mike is always the point person for KRI, at least anytime I was going down there. So I met Mike, professionally speaking, in regards to presentations, things like that. Now, I also know a lot of Mike's friends and acquaintances, and a lot of them would come up to me almost talking, like in a little hush whisper, like, hey, have you heard about what's been going on with Mike? Or do you know any of his stories or anything like that? And I was like, no, not really. And I would get little tidbits here and there. And one time when I went to the center, Mike had an iPad, and there was a picture on this iPad, and it's of a cabin up in New Hampshire, and it's a night vision trail camera picture. And the picture is of basically the cabin in the dark and the grass, but there's also this beam of light that's coming down from nowhere, from above. Don't know what it's coming from. And it's haunting. It's a gorgeous picture. It's actually in the book. And I was just amazed, A, that he was sharing it with me, and B, I wanted to know more. So Mike started to give me little tidbits here and there. And as Mike and I became more acquainted with each other, there was, the beginnings of a friendship started. And Mike and I ended up having this really long phone call, probably a year after we met, maybe a year and a half. And I was sitting in a Burger King parking lot at the time. And we ended up talking for like 2.5 hours. And he basically told me his entire extraterrestrial life story. And it was just amazing, frightening encounter after frightening encounter. And he didn't get into, minute detail or anything. It was a high overview, but it's so many encounters that it ended up being a 2.5 hour conversation. So from that conversation, I really started to get the bug to, we got to get this story told. And we got to get it told, not just to have another book out there in ufology or anything like that. It's what Mike has gone through with these encounters is the crux of why the story needs to be told, and that it can help other people. So Mike and I batted around the idea of putting this book out. He had some concerns, I had some concerns, and we addressed them together, and we ended up being in lockstep for most of this process. Now, when we did have that discussion and the book idea came up, I was also right in the middle of like 3 other projects. I'm always in like 3 other projects. So I was right in the middle of, making this documentary, and I had just had a previous book come out that was still something I was under contract for. So I was still doing promotion for that. So I let Mike know that I can't even look at this. We can't even really get started for like another year. And he was not only patient, he was understanding. He was like, I just want it done right. And if we have to wait, we have to wait. I don't know if Mike, if you want to interject a little bit here.
No, I don't really want to, but since you threw me the floor, I guess I have to. Yeah, no, that's pretty much accurate, because it was exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. Like I do with other experiencers, like I knew I had to get the story out there, and I needed to know that I could do it in the right perspective. And I know both of my guests and hosts here, will understand the only way to do it is the right way. And yeah, it was an easy decision with Nomar, but
yeah. And when Mike and I were finally able to sit down for formal interviews, and when I say formal interview, I really just mean that I could adequately document everything that he was telling me. So obviously I took notes, but I also wanted to record these conversations. So we had our first initial conversation probably almost 2 years from that conversation. We met in southern Maine. And he told me the whole story again. I took some notes, recorded him, and then I started kind of organizing the information chronologically. As I was doing that, I wanted to make sure I had as much, for lack of a better term, intimate detail. I wanted to know what he was thinking in that moment. You have the story of what happened. I saw the slide. I was with my cousin, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but were you scared? What were you feeling? What were you thinking? What happened a few days later? What happened a month later? What happened 20 years later? All in regards to specific encounters. So that led to another long form interview. And we did this one at Mike's office in Newmarket, New Hampshire, and recorded that one as well. And this is where this is where the rawness, the feelings of his encounters came out, and the way he explains everything, he's got a very warm tone. He's very calm, and you can actually sense the fear in his voice. It trembles sometimes during certain moments of what he's explaining. And it was, Mike and I have described it as almost going to war, and you're bonded as war buddies. And that's not to belittle people who are actually, veterans, but just like the closest comparison. And
let me jump in here for a
Sure.
moment, Nomar, just to say, for me, bringing up memories of various writing projects over the years, and in working with people who have had UFO-related experiences that are traumatic, as opposed to beatific, transcendent, and very positive, which also happens. Sometimes the challenge is, how do I present this material, not just to people who normally will be gravitating toward UFO, paranormal, experiencer-related books, but reaching the wider audience without blowing their fuses, so to say, without pushing too hard on their anxieties in dealing with their threshold of what they're comfortable with. It can be quite a subtle wrestling match sometimes to tell the truth without any embellishment, and at the same time respect the anxiety of certain readers that you want to reach, but at the same time that you don't want to estrange because they're not comfortable with some of the things that happen to people like have happened to Mike.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I think the way we tackled that was to be as honest and as genuine as we could possibly be. And that only, and since we were like that, it could only translate that way onto paper, and I think we were successful in that way.
I do too. It was more a rhetorical question, but I think you did a great job at that.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah,
Let me ask Mike a question now, which is, like so many experiencers with memories or partial memories going way back, you remember events that happened to you in this realm at about 3 years old. Now, if this is happening to you at 3 years old, this is your life. This is not, out of sorts. It's maybe strange, but that's the nature of reality for you as a 3-year-old. You're not comparing notes with other 3-year-olds. And can you, Mike, take a few minutes, just a little time, to relate to us as though you were sitting with Nomar for the first time, telling him about that part of your experience, where it all started and how you felt about it at the time, and reflecting back on it, your thoughts on it now.
Yeah. So Nomar was always, we all do this. People, we all try to be non-judgmental, but we all judge people. You look at people from across the street, we're like, don't cross street. Yeah, you can cross street. You're like, that sort of thing. I met Nomar through a mutual friend. Nomar and this other friend were working on a project together and to do a thing at KRI. I hadn't met Nomar yet, but I had known the other guy, and he was self-admitted horrible at responding back to people. So I don't feel like I'm talking bad about him. And then we kind of got grouped up, and Nomar was always the first one to respond and this and that. Like we soon found out we had the same anxieties later on as people, but even professionally, I need this to go off. I'm presenting. I need this to go off without a hitch too. So within that bond, then we finally met. He was just one of those people you instantly like. And So as far as first time, because he didn't just come up to me and be like, hey, I heard you're an experiencer. Tell me your whole story right now. I need it, like, on the table, not even to hear it or to write it down. He was never like, he's really become the best friend I never knew I needed. But repeat your question again, because I think I'm missing the second part of it.
Specifically, your earliest memories of your first experience, going back to about 3
Okay,
years
yep,
old.
yep.
Can you share that with us in the same kind of manner and spirit that you first shared it with the future author of the book about your experiences?
Well, something everybody kind of deals with, but maybe not most people understand, and not that experiencers understand. Experiencers understand duality. Like, can be sucked up in the middle of the night, be taken off wherever, whatever happens, be dropped off, and you still have to pay your electric bill. You still have to go to school, work, whatever, in the next day. And a lot of people who haven't been, they're like, oh, I'm interested in the subject. I want to hear the story, but they're not that close to it. They don't understand the reality of it. So like when I talk to Nomar, he's talked to a lot of people. I know a lot of people, and he even if I said something that sounded outlandish or crazy, he's like, no, I understand. Like, he was always comforting, and going to the supermarket and trying to tell the guy in line ahead of you, like, hey, oh, you only got one thing? Go ahead of me, but I'm going to, like, make you listen to this UFO tale. Like, no.
But Mike, can you share with us specifically what you remember about the experience that you had at 3 years old?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we're at my grandmother's house in Southampton, New Hampshire. I don't remember what it was for, bigger family function, because it was like my aunts, uncles, cousins, this and that. Like a larger, family gathering. And the way my grandmother's kitchen, you came in through the front door, through the kitchen, and then there was a dining room, and there was a little, like, 3-season porch off of it. And once I walked by that porch, there was calling, like, you have to get outside, you have to get outside, you have to, like, it was almost like like my whole body basically shut down and said, you have to get outside. And, like, we weren't raised like that. Like, they hawk eyes, and I found myself out in the driveway, but not only alone, with my cousin, who's about 6 months older than I am. And we're both standing there, kind of looking at each other like, off some cousin capers. Don't get me wrong, but we knew what we were doing or intending at the time. This is, we're both standing in the driveway going, what's going on? And the next thing we know, the woods behind my grandmother starts glowing red like there's a forest fire or something. And this stereotypical, domed craft finally rises above tree line and floats towards us and parks itself just next to this large tree at the end of the driveway. And that's where my memories start. From there was this just looking at you, but this was a hair different. It really felt like somebody was looking at you, staring at you, or dare say inside you. And we just watched this, and there was a color bar or a row of lights, I guess, around the midsection of this thing, and it had a certain pattern. It was kind of, but it wasn't like individual bulbs. It was like if it was a fluid thing, like it just kind of changed colors naturally and just did it. And it was more like soft white lights, this and that. And all of a sudden, this color bar, it changed in intensity and how much the color was changing. And it went to more oranges, reds, that type of the spectrum. And next thing you know, it's almost like when you open your car door at night, like there was a soft yellow glow, which revealed a row of windows above this bar of light. And we could make out humanoid, like you could, heads and shoulders. You couldn't like see any features or anything like that. But that happened. And then there was a memory, like my standing memory, that went from that to the next thing this object is the other end of the driveway, sitting above a telephone pole by the road, and then just shot off into space and disappeared. But that was my growing up standard memory.
And you remembered this consciously throughout your life, or it was forgotten and then brought back in some manner?
Yes and no. Like it's always been, it was not brought back by hypnosis. There's been periods of my life where I've forgotten it or tried to forget it, I guess. But no, this is a actual memory. This isn't something by hypnosis.
Got it. One last question before turning it back to Nomar. While this was going on, to the best of your memory, were you just kind of taking it in, experiencing it, not feeling any, extraordinary anxieties or emotions, just kind of interesting, maybe even a bit wondrous? What was the accompanying experience for you of this remarkable experience?
Well, it's hard to say looking back because I on the experience. But weirdly enough, I was mid-20s by the time I actually had any hypnosis around this. I'm frightened of seeing a light in the sky than I am an actual being, because in my experience, I know it's not everybody's, there is a comforting factor that comes from them. But I've experiences, and sometimes just the onset of a light, in the sky that shouldn't be there is more frightening to me personally than actually being with them.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Nomar, as you're collecting this chronicle from Mike and setting it down, this is not your first rodeo. You have a background in experience and research and investigation of your own. Did you proceed with, and I know you'll be entirely straightforward here, did you proceed just like as a human sponge, just taking it all in objectively, setting it down without trying to, shape or comment it? Or do you have an overriding philosophy or theories or thoughts about these other intelligences that you look for, or you're particularly keyed to?
With the theories, my own theories, they evolve all the time. Anytime I talk to somebody new, it leads me a different way. So
yeah,
it was really easy to not do that to Mike's story. And it was, again, really easy from an author's perspective to not write with bias.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was talking to Mike, I was wrapped up emotionally in the story, because he was so emotional with what he was telling me, it was hard not to. It felt human to relate to him just on an emotional level. I have never experienced anything like Mike has in any way. So the only way I was relating to it was the physical and emotional trauma that he was talking with and projecting during this telling of the story. And that was a lot to deal with personally. I have my own struggles with anxiety and depression, and have had and continue to have really dark thoughts. Mike does as well. The catalyst for his trauma is apparently extraterrestrial, and I do believe that. And my triggers or my causes or catalysts for anxiety and depression is not extraterrestrial, but we exhibit, these similar traits. So when I'm talking not to just only Mike, but to any other experiencer, the only thing I want to do is to be kind and non-judgmental, because it was like you're saying, I try to be a sponge. I just take it all in. I ask some follow-up questions, but really I'm just trying to take it all in. And after this project, not to fast forward through anything, but after this project, it was really heavy. It was heavy for both of us, and I needed just to kind of wipe the slate clean with all the heaviness of it all. And we'll get into why it's so heavy, but it took a toll. It took a toll on me that I was not expecting nor prepared for.
Yeah. One thing I've learned over the decades, really, in recording, chronicling accounts from people, again, in the particular category of having been through, whether it's UFO abduction or extreme paranormal experiences or interfacing with some other intelligence, that have not had a good time, that have suffered some, or most certainly suffered trauma in the course of it, is how do you manage or assist that individual in managing their own stress, and how do you assist yourself in managing stress in these studies and involvements? One of the most memorable talks I ever had the privilege of giving was in 1998. John Mack, who had become a good friend by then and who had asked me to do a final proofreading of his book Abduction,
Wow.
which had already been professionally proofread. And I couldn't find a comma out of place, a misspelling, a semicolon where a colon should be. But I did find a name that should have been a pseudonym, but was a real name. And it could have caused some real problems for the individual. And it kind of cemented our friendship. And he said, I want to get you, see if I can get you to speak at Harvard. And I thought, well, that's a nice thing to try. He hit the wall on that nicely, but he did invite me to speak at Cambridge Hospital
Wow.
within the psychiatric wing, which I thought was hysterical, for staff, for invited guests, and for anybody that really wanted to come. And it was a two-part talk. It was on the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident, but the second half of it, he joined me on stage. And it was a discussion on just that, managing stress in UFO work, the people that you're working with and your own. And no matter how much you aspire to be a good writer, an honest broker, somebody who is setting down an account in a way that is absolutely authentic, that you and the person you're working with can be proud of, it can take big bites out of you while you're doing it. And sometimes it all catches up with you later. So I respect what you have gone through in the course of creating really this marvelous book, also with some history of related events, in New England and elsewhere, which I think is doubly valuable, especially to folks who are just getting into this most complex and challenging area of UFO related reading.
Yeah, yeah. I think providing context is always important, and that could be within the encounter itself,
Yeah.
or within the area of where something is happening. It's always something that I look for when I'm consuming, some sort of content that's related to this manner, and it's always been valuable to me. It leads me. It helps me with my research because I'll get breadcrumbs that I can take from somebody else that's sharing the larger picture, if you will. Somebody's telling a story about something that happened in Pennsylvania, and then you get to know what town it was in Pennsylvania, and then next thing you know, you're down a rabbit hole and you have found out about 10 other UFO sightings or 3 haunted houses or something, And I always think that's the fun part of it is, I do the research, and it's a lot. I mean, what that's like. And, but I also want people to continue to look into the subject, beyond what I've done or beyond what you've done or what Mike's done, and that's always the fun part to me.
Now, once you started to produce manuscript material, you are now writing this up. It's starting to take the form of chapters. How did you two refine your working process? Did you just continue to put it together, put it into chapter form, and Mike continued to simply give you his accounts, answer your questions, refine details, or at a certain point, did you start to give him the manuscript material that you were creating for him to react to in order to better refine it or make it more accurate? Curious about your collective work process here, especially when working with this kind
I
of
can
material.
answer that.
Please do.
I can answer that if Nomar needs to take a breather. So, like you said, we had, professional interaction, getting him and just knowing him as a professional and this and that, and starting to know him. And that's when he asked, can we do the book? And, and we went through that. And then once we started, we had these 2 long interview processes in person. Process after that was like, Facebook Messenger or actual phone calls. Like, can I clarify this? Can I clarify that? And this and that. And we got to, he was just trying to clarify something, and he just caught me on the right night or the wrong night, depending on how you want to look at it. And I said, this is where the last chapter of the book comes out. And it's like, well, if you're really going to need to know the truth, and I trust you, and blah, 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 here it is. So yeah, we walked away from a publisher. We had a rough draft. I didn't see the book. Maybe like here's a chapter or something like that. But like, it was my story, but I was letting him, write it. Because I had tried writing on my own. It was such a different perspective, and it was like drug through the mud perspective. Like, it wouldn't have been the same book. And so as we were writing this, and like we kept like nobody, we argued a day. Like at some interview, I'm like, it's your book, you do it. He's like, it's your story, you do it. Like we're totally. We fight with each other for the wrong reasons on this. Nobody's like wants to, be famous for it or anything, but buy the book too. Yeah, it was just like we became, like he said earlier, just so bonded. And it wasn't just me telling him his story. His story opened up stuff in him that I related to, my story, intermingled, and we became like war buddies. And like, we did like every step of the process of making this book somehow happened, but like through the worst of circumstances. Like we walked away from, we had a good friend of ours like step up and be an editor, and like just everything worked out the way it should have.
Yeah. Well said.
Because we didn't want to sell out. We wanted to tell the story we wanted to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and from an author's perspective, I sat with the recorded material, so I had that to reference constantly. And while listening to that and transcribing some of it and fleshing out the chapters and the stories, that's when I would contact Mike and be like, tell me a little bit more about this, or tell me a little bit more about that. And some of the more darker things were coming out. And like Mike was saying, I caught him on a particular night when he decided to share something that I was just so surprised and jaw dropped and sad to hear. And which just goes to show how raw and honest I felt he was being. It kind of reiterated that to me, and I thought that was really important.
Yeah. I think some people looking from the outside, even with a sympathetic, open-minded point of view, all of this seems rather romantic. You've interfaced with non-human beings. You have made contact with other intelligences. You've been taken. Gosh, what's that like? And again, romanticizing it. I remember years ago giving several talks for a national UFO group in Tokyo. During one of the breaks, a young woman came up to me very respectfully, and through my translator, talking about the abduction experience. Again, I'm not sure the nuance of the translation, but it was essentially, I would die to have such an experience. I don't know if she was speaking allegorically. I hope so, rather than actually. But again, people have had very beatific, mind-expanding, positive experiences, and then they basically, had the shit scared out of them and had as traumatic a moment as they're ever going to have in their life. And I'm wondering for you, Nomar, if there was a point when Mike was sharing with you when you felt, no matter what your professional demeanor and the expression on your face, that you thought, I'm really not comfortable with this. I thought I, could take in this whole thing, but he is starting to, what he is saying is pushing against the edges of what I am comfortable with accepting. I have no doubt that he's telling me the truth as best he remembers it, but this is rough stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. There were numerous moments where I had that thought process. And instead of running away from it or deleting something that I wrote, I leaned into it.
Yep.
And said, if I'm going to really truly try to understand this, I actually need to ask more questions. I need more information. And Mike always was willing to answer everything. And it was amazing. And along the way, he kept making me feel more and more comfortable with those more, lack of a better term, outlandish encounters, if you will. So yeah, he's the one that made me comfortable and uncomfortable at the same time. Quite an interesting process.
Yeah. There comes a time for every writer, and in a case like this where you're in partnership with somebody, where you have reached a tipping point and where there is some gravitas now. You know that you have the makings of a real book here, and it's starting to get, in its own quiet, sometimes literary way, exciting. And it creates a bit more fire and enthusiasm, even if sometimes it feels a little grim. Do either one of you remember that point in looking at this material and saying, wow, this is really shaping up, and this is going to be a book that we can both be proud of, and that is going to impact on people, hopefully in a positive way?
One portion that I remember at least having that tipping point feeling, I do think there was actually maybe a few times, but when he shared with me the crux of his mental health issues, and it was moving and sad, and I knew that if he was going to allow that kind of truth into this book, then that we would have something really special. And I didn't even care if it sold one copy. I would email out the PDF, if that's what it took. But I knew, having that information, that we were going to help people. That Mike was actually going to probably save a life, multiple lives.
I agree.
That was a huge moment for me.
Mike, did you have a similar point in looking at this developing manuscript where you thought, my God, this guy is really telling my story on the terms that I had hoped he would? We're certainly not there yet, but I can see it taking shape, and it's going to be a book. This is special.
Yeah, there is some point, I think, when he originally asked me, I thought it was going to be just like any other UFO book. Here, this happened when, that type of thing. And then just getting to know Nomar and like becoming friends and becoming comfortable. Like we witnessed a lot of stuff. Like this book was paranormal or something, but like almost guided by something above us. Like the way it all went down and the way it happened. And yeah, it just, it was a labor of love for both of us. And it did say, like, I don't know whether you believe in God or I call it the universe, but whatever is above us said, no, this is a book you're going to put out and we're going to go into break.
And we are going to go into break here. This is Peter Robbins with my special guests, Mike Stevens and Nomar Slevik, and we will be back in about 3 minutes here on Meanwhile, here on Earth.
Hey members, the new KGRA-DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA-DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA-DB.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for second half of Meanwhile Here on Earth with my guest, Mike Stevens and Nomar Slevik. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Hi.
You know, as a film lover, I'm always interested in popular cultural references that sometimes come up in our work. Um, I I would not describe myself as a major science fiction fan, but of course, I've been immersed in it since I was a kid, like so many of us, almost involuntarily at times. And again, as a movie lover, a great bad movie can be as enjoyable as a great movie. And sometimes there are films that just don't fit into any category. And you use one as a chapter heading reference. It's a film from 1963 that I remember the first time I saw it in the theater thinking, this is in a class by itself, a film called Strange Invaders that I have watched a number of times since on television. Why did you choose that film? Because it really is, there's just nothing quite like it. It is its own dream, National Enquirer, poignant, all-American state. Which one of you wanted to make that reference? And is that a film that's a special place in your hearts as well?
It was me, and it does hold a special place in my heart. I've seen it a few times, definitely not as much as you, and I also saw it like in my childhood. I've actually yet to revisit it as an adult. And when I say childhood, I mean the last time I probably saw it, I was a teenager, But it was like you were saying, it intertwines some things that actually happened within ufology. It was taking little bits of historical information. I didn't know that as a child. As I was getting into my teens and getting into the whole, UFO universe, I was starting to recognize things, and that movie in particular, was making some references that are not that well known to the passive person with interest in ufology. So I thought it was an accurate representation of what that chapter was to entail.
Wow. Well, I recommend it as an entertainment, but a very poignant one and a very unique vision of the subject at hand. Mike, a question for you, and it's something I often ask people that have had UFO-related abduction experiences. You reach a certain point, still in your childhood, where you either intuit or know or sense that this is not an experience that the kids have had, and that maybe I should not be talking about it to them because I want to be like the rest of the kids. Do you remember having an experience like that, or hitting a time or a feeling like that?
Very vaguely. I remember like when it was happening at a very young age and trying to like tell it to one person. They're just kind of shying away, and I kind of understood even at that age, like, oh, this is not something we talk about. I didn't hear any of the other kids talking about it, and like I could be poster child for the hide behind your mother's leg thing. We grew up in a house next to my grandmother. I knew how to speak, and my grandmother's a huge part of my life. About a year and a half before I would talk to her, because she was outside of the immediate family, like outside of the ooh and the ah and the trauma, and the horror. Everybody wants to like just reuse these stories. Like in the real life, how it affected me was, true. I didn't speak to anybody outside my immediate family if I didn't have to. Even then, I was quiet.
So basically, you came away feeling from this period of time in your youth that maybe you were the only person in your family so affected, or that there might have been other members of your family that might have had similar experiences.
I knew my cousin because of my memory, but I didn't really think at that point it went past that. But I just knew we weren't. I shouldn't say knew, but I grew up with the feeling that we shouldn't talk about it, implanted from above, or just maybe our family culture too. But yeah, no, I grew up with my cousin who I had that first memory of. And then somewhere in my mid-20s, I did regression, got a little, not a lot in the middle. But me and my cousin always grew up talking about, hey, remember the UFO we saw at Graham's? And it was like, yeah, surface conversation. And so I was probably in my mid-20s, but I finally reached out to her because I had the hypnogression, and kind of relived what I went through. So I kind of reached out to her and I was like, hey, can you tell me what you remember? What she remembered was something totally different. Not only she remembered nothing of that experience. She remembered a whole nother experience. And when she started telling me, I started to remember, oh crap. Like, but to me, we're around 10, somewhere between 10 or 12 at that age when that episode happened, once I kind of re-put it into my brain. But in the meanwhile, there was this gap of this childhood UFO we had talked about at a surface. Hey, remember the UFO that happened years and years before that memory? And then she brought this on, and it's a memory. So, I mean, there is a little user malfunction, obviously, but yeah, when she started talking about it, I remembered it vividly, and it's like, oh crap. And what that was, we were at my grandmother's house again, and we ended up moving next door, not across the street next door, but like directly connected to the property. And we were sitting there on my grandmother's porch. Had this big wraparound porch, kind of like red light coming in the sky, and it started like doing almost like figure skating, like perfect, almost 8 and this and that. Even at a young age, we never thought it was a plane or anything. Put on a show for us. So, like, I know people have bad experiences and bad abductions and that sort of thing, and it was kind of, I think, in their way, my interpretation, not anything scientific. They're like, yeah, we're here, but it's.
Got it. Nomar, your thoughts on what Mike has just kind of laid out from us and how you chose to approach it in book form.
Well, I wanted to share, obviously anything that he was comfortable with, but I too was curious if he was the outcast, in school or even at home. And, some things that he shared with me was his family. And this was kind of unspoken, but it was okay to talk about hauntings, things like that. But UFOs felt taboo.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, so that's one reason he didn't bring that up, to his family at the time. And in school, he was also very reserved and didn't talk to a lot of kids, didn't have a whole ton of friends. And honestly, that kind of mimicked my life as a child. I grew up, had a bit of a hard time growing up, and I could obviously relate to him on that level. So really anything that was too embarrassing or is uncomfortable to talk about, Mike was okay with putting it in the book. And again, that all kind of goes back to the whole general realm of people can relate. This can help. Hey, I felt that way too. Even though it wasn't extraterrestrials, even though it wasn't a ghost or whatever the hell, I felt that way too. So I can relate to this dude, and I thought it was important to get information like that. And again, he was very willing to share it. It was cool.
Mike, at what point in your life did you feel more comfortable talking about this subject with other people? And was it something that was kind of encouraged in you by maybe reading some of the better known or more respected authors and books on the subject?
Yeah, I mean, as a young child, we would go, my grandfather on my mother's side, he lived in New Jersey, and we'd get down there at least once a summer and eating. And so no matter whatever fun or adventures we'd have when we were with them, there was always a trip to the bookstore. And he'd be like, pick out whatever you want. Like, I don't care. Just, it's like, I want you to read. I want you to, always encourage that. And at the end cap of one of these aisles was a paperback of a man you know very well, Peter, a man named Bud Hopkins and Intruders. And it was way above my reading level. And I just said, I have to pick this up. I need it. And even at the counter, I remember, I think we documented in the book too, like him rolling his eyes, like, you want? I'm like, yeah. No knowing that's about UFOs or this or that or aliens or any of that. It's like, yeah, no, this is the book I need. Yeah. And then once he passed, we find out he had this whole collection of books on Roswell and this and that. Like, he was interested too. We might think he might be maybe, one of those secret, experiences in the family, because he didn't talk about it at that point. Whether that's true or not doesn't matter, but just he knew what I was grabbing and rolled his eyes at me, so.
Yeah. At a certain point, you made a very big decision, which was not just to learn more about it, kind of appraise your own experiences from a personal point of view, but do something that Bud Hopkins, in fact, had pioneered, which was to set up a support group, a group for people who had had experiences similar to the ones that you have had over the years, and to bring them together to address common questions, issues, challenges. How did that transition happen? And Nomar, were you actually at any point involved in attending any of these meetings? In fact, let me ask you first before going on to Mike on that.
I don't believe I attended any of his meetings in a official capacity. I was at some of the KRI meetings that had pretty much the group that would go to Mike's support group, but I felt it was a bit intrusive to go in there, and yeah, and I wasn't sure how comfortable people would be with me knowing that I'm an author, and I've certainly had my own experiences, but my intent, in their minds, I would think from their perspective, would be, oh, he's trying to get more stories for his little books,
Good for you. On occasion over the years, we would have a guest within the support group, but never without the absolute agreement of everyone in that group before the fact, and that person, of course, agreeing to the terms that everyone else had agreed to of complete confidentiality. But Mike, again, to repose the question, how did you make that transition? What made you wanted to be there for others and establish a working group that continues on, into this time?
Well, I mean, it's kind of, if you ever watched the old cartoons of Yogi and, Boo Boo, like, if you got a sandwich in your picnic basket, you share it with somebody, it's basic humanity. And a lot of mainstream, people might not see this as their reality, but a lot of people have been through it, definitely understand. And like I'm not a hero or a guru. My basic position is just to get us all together. And once we're all together, then we can kind of formulate how we move forward. But the main goal is to move forward, whether it's a baby step or a giant.
Yeah, no question about it. I'm imagining that some of the people in your group have gone on to form their own friendships coming out of the group. And let's face it, the purpose of any support group is to support each other. It is, I think, not meant to be a lifestyle that you do for the rest of your entire life, unless you actually really need it, want it, or regard it as something that you enjoy and draw regular, benefits from. But for other people, it's something to help you move past the reason you're in the group and return to what we'll laughingly call the civilian world in this context. As a UFO experiencer, abductee, Mike, and as a chronicler of accounts, Nomar, I sort of think there's a function that we all have to help educate the public and to help. I don't know if you can ever normalize this subject for somebody that's never had it happen, but for members, of our immediate viewing audience in the chat room here, and for everybody else around the country and around the world that's watching and listening tonight, any thoughts on how, as individuals, we can go forward to assist other people in wrapping their heads around this and in beginning to accept it as a reality and deal with people like Mike who have had these experiences as somebody very much like them, except that they've had experiences that you have not had, the same way that you have had experiences they have not had, but in your case, a light year and to the 10th power.
For me personally, it's almost like talking about mental health. And for me specifically with suicide, it's fundamentally important to normalize conversations regarding topics like that. And in the normalization process, it becomes more comfortable for people who are uncomfortable with it to at least hear it, to accept it. And they might still have to sidestep it. They might have to not get involved, which is fine. But at the very least, they're not throwing hate towards it. And I think that's maybe at the very least all we can hope for. I don't want somebody like Mike to have a negative response from what you were saying, the civilian world, if you will, if he decides to share his topic in public. Say Mike and I were meeting at a restaurant and we're talking about this. We shouldn't have to talk in hushed tones. At the same time, we shouldn't be yelling it from the tables. But if somebody happens to hear it, it's not the biggest of deals, and that's why I think it's really great the way mental health and this topic really come together in this book. And Mike is a shining example of normalizing the conversation. Now, he's had a lifetime of this, and it's probably within the last 10 years. I mean, he can articulate it better probably, but probably in the last 10 years, he's finally gotten comfortable with it, and Mike's in his 40s. So that's a long time to have lived with it and not to be able to talk about it freely. Agreed. So I'm hoping this process was freeing for him, or more freeing for him, but yeah, I guess that's my thought process on it.
Would you say that's a fact, Mike, that this whole process over the last 10 years has allowed you to own this, so to say, at a more fundamental level than prior to the last decade?
I just want to say something. I want to say something really quick.
Yes and no. All right. Go first.
Sorry, somebody named Bim Jim in the comments said you don't want to normalize suicide. He's absolutely right. I'm talking about normalizing the discussion around people who are considering suicide, not suicide
Yes,
itself, but
of course.
the
And
discussion of suicide.
I, in no way was I talking about normalizing suicide as
Right.
opposed to normalizing
No.
or getting some equilibrium on paranormal UFO related experiences. No question about that.
No.
And Mike, this does bring up a very serious question. And thank you
Sure.
for shifting the gears to our viewer in the chat room there. For many reasons, people consider ending their lives. Not because I have had somebody that I love and is very close to me do that, but certainly friends and acquaintances over the years and people I've met. I worked for 8 years, as some of my viewers know, in crisis intervention, working as a volunteer and later as a shift supervisor, and phone volunteer for the busiest suicide hotline in America, Samaritans International New York office. With a number of breaks, I interfaced with a lot of people who were there on the actual or the allegorical ledge. And one of the things for me in people I've met and gotten to know who have had the kind of experiences you've had, Mike, who have been just so distraught about them that they have thought ending my life is preferable, is you kind of enter the eye of an emotional storm where you're kind of beyond feeling on a certain level. It's just, this hurts so much. This is so isolating. This is so anxiety provoking that I think just turning things off and disappearing out of consciousness might be preferable to struggling. And when you perceive what you're thinking in a moment like that, it's actually chilling to think you're beyond even caring in that moment about the despair and the impact this is going to have on people that love you. Mike, you of course discuss this in the book with Nomar's very able ability to lay it out for readers. But can you take us into that place briefly where these experiences compelled you to actually consider ending your life and how you backed away from the ledge, so to say, and continued on?
Yeah, actually, pretty easily. Well, not that anybody can venture into these topics easily, but yeah, I can explain it. I was pretty much at the height of my game. I was, I was a speaker at every major conference with you, I went out to dinner when the conference ended with you, Charlie Falls of the Allagash abductions, Jim Weiner, a good Dean Merchant. I should have been as happy as a pig in blank. I won't make anybody hit the button, but my brain wasn't saying that. My brain was saying, this is as good as it gets. Time to hang it up. And as time moved on, and I have permission to, and because you're a friend of them as well, I'll actually use their name. It was on Michael. That was the game changer. And my brain, like, subtly, if that even matters, I was at the peak of my game. Like, people die to be in my shoes and be like, you got to speak at a UFO conference. You got to do this and that. Like, yeah, but that's not what my head was telling me. My head was like, you're fucking miserable. And that's the worst part about it is like, I know I had good people around me I could reach out to, and I didn't.
Got it.
But I'm here. I bet a lot of people hopefully won't be through. A lot of people be through more shit than I ever will be, but hang on, it's worth it.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that with us. I know how difficult it is. Nomar, your thoughts on chronicling this aspect of Mike's story?
I was very much a human being in that moment. I was just listening to him, and it wasn't about chronicling it at that point. It was just, oh, my friend is telling me something that's quite severe, and I just need to sit with that for a moment. And so I did. And I cried when he told me. And it was, obviously, it was really sad. And, but to put it in the book, I thought was incredibly brave of Mike. And I wanted to handle it as carefully and as caring as possible.
Yeah.
So I wrote out that specific portion of the book and I sent it to Mike. And then I also sent it to the widow of the person who Mike mentioned, Michael,
That's right.
to make sure she was comfortable with sharing why Mike decided to not end his life. And she read it. Thank you. And she read it and she was very positive about it. And so I think we handled it with care, but just from an author and human being perspective, it was tough. And I didn't expect it to be that way. But the one thing I came to expect with Granite Skies writing the book was to expect the unexpected. I never knew where it was going to go. It was kind of a roller coaster, but not like this crazy, insane roller coaster. It was a roller coaster of emotions, sure, but it was a roller coaster of the type of story it was turning into. It wasn't just your typical book on alien abduction or a collection of stories, which my previous two books were just collections of stories. And that's not to minimize those people's stories, but it was my first time working on a book solely about one person.
Big difference.
Yeah, and absolutely.
Mike, thank you for letting me put you on that spot. I know it hurts and I know it still costs. And just a reminder of how close to the surface these things remain. One thought for any of you that has a friend that is, in your estimation, so depressed, even if they're masking it, doing their best to act as if they're not. If you know them, you may sense the depth. Or if they're giving you real indications, giving away things, acting more and more as an outsider. There is part of the mythology is that if I were to say to somebody, are you really depressed enough to be considering like ending your life? That person's going to say, wow, what a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. I am miserable, but wow, I could kill myself. Thank you for that suggestion. No, it doesn't work like that. And it's understandable that we don't allow ourselves to say that to people that we care about because we just don't know. One of the things I learned in years of doing what I did and having a very good training for a layperson through the Samaritans International Organization to do this work. We were not trained to be junior psychiatrists or mental health professionals. We were trained to steer toward toward the pain, and never to, in so many words, tell somebody what we thought they should do. But if you have somebody in your life, whether the cause, and it's often a number of things that push individuals to that point of feeling they're coming close to no return, and whether or not they should give up on being a living thing, is ask them, I know you're depressed, or I think you're really depressed, but are you thinking of taking your life? Are you considering suicide? If they are, they're going to welcome you're actually asking them. It shows that you care enough. And in this area, I'd like to think it's getting easier on people because of how deeply enculturated, even if it's in a fantastic way and in an entertainment sense, UFO abduction and other related subjects are. But if you're the individual, it doesn't matter. It can, of course, still be the most isolating, frightening thing you've ever even contemplated or not contemplated in your life. So whether it's a depression that you sense is going on for a more than conventional reason, if that's fair to say, or a very unconventional one, if you love the person or you care about them, ask the question. And sometimes that can begin the process of them talking about what in the name of all that's holy is eating them up alive. So that's my 2 cents there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'd like to point out, again, this is when I say normalization, or when we're discussing normalization, it's about the discussion, what we're actually doing right now. It's not the act itself. That's what we're trying to avoid. So if we can normalize this discussion, hopefully somebody who's feeling that way will feel comfortable to talk about it and to not do that. Also, I just wanted to point out, in the book, there is a trigger warning when that portion of the book comes up. And there's also some contact information for suicide prevention.
It sure is. And I wish more authors would add those simple things when they're working in this realm, in this area. For me, Granite Skies joins that growing genre of UFO literature that includes the great books about people who have been through these things, books like John Fuller's Interrupted Journey or Bud Hopkins' Intruders. But it also joins a growing number of books that are either written as you guys are working as a team of an experiencer or abductee and an author, or experiencers and abductees taking it on themselves and finding that they not only have a voice, but if they do what we try to do, Nomar, and keep the hell out of our own way and just allow the material to come out, that they can tell their stories as well as anybody else can. I don't know about you, Nomar. I remember when I first started to write years ago, my training was as a painter, and I only thought in terms of pictures, really. And at a certain point, part of that transition for me was, oh, you can make pictures with words. You've known that since you could read. If you want to change mediums, the rules are very much the same. But then came that wonderful self-conscious sort of transitional period of, what should my style be as a writer? Should it be more Hemingway-esque or Dostoevsky? Or, you go through these pompous kind of internal reflections, and then if you're lucky, the good old 15-watt bulb goes off over your head and say, my style will be what I write as honestly as I can, if I can keep the hell out of my way and not find what's a bigger, more sophisticated word for that little word. And then you can laugh at yourself, and then you can really get going.
Yeah, absolutely. And you put it pretty well. For me, for me,
Can I interrupt? Can I interrupt?
Please.
Can I? he's probably going to tell the same story I'm going to tell you he's going to tell, but he's actually so glad he recorded it because he started drifting on his own and like reliving it with me. Like we had to take breaks because we both had tears in our eyes and stuff. Like it was intense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in a way, that's the way it should be. Especially for guys, tend to be more armored. Real deep feelings are more problematic for us as a rule, but not always. And again, to keep out of our own way and let those feelings come out in these exchanges to refine unique books like this, as well as to let yourself feel as you're doing the writing and hope that that feeling communicates as much as hearing it from the subject of your writing.
You're right. I think that's a really honest way to go about it. And as a man in 2021, I don't identify with bottling your feelings or, not expressing your emotions or things like that. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and, I don't preach my problems to anybody that'll listen. I'm reserved in that way, but I don't shy away from crying and telling people that I cry and, all that kind of good stuff. But as far as the writing piece of it goes, for me, it was music as opposed to painting and switching mediums. I mean, I still work with audio quite a bit, but in switching mediums professionally, it was a night and day process initially. And then I'm like, over time, I'm like, this is actually really similar. I'm finding that my process for creation is actually similar, and I can actually do this. Now, it took me 6 years to write my first book, as opposed to 1 year. I'm 5 books later, 1 year to write Granite Skies. So I've kind of streamlined the process, quite a bit. But
you also had a partner to work with that facilitated that movement. That's not always the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, prior books, it's all about the research and setting up interviews. And that process, just to do that process could take a year in itself. And then you got to write the book, so the research and making sure you're sourcing everything as accurately as possible. All of that's hugely important. And even though Mike was the main source for this book, if you flip to the bibliography of this book, there's still, 2 or 3 pages of citations in there, because I'm trying to tell a balanced story. So we hear something that seems outlandish from Mike. Well, I want to back it up with a few other things that other people have experienced. I also want to back it up with something that could be maybe a more mundane explanation for it, and then leave it up to the reader to decide,
Well done.
Thanks.
Are there any abduction related films, either based on reality or quality fiction, that either one of you have been particularly touched by or moved by and feel you could recommend to our viewing audience?
Yeah, for me, I have 3 that come to mind. There's the go-to Fire in the Sky, of course. Also, The Fourth Kind. I was just mesmerized by that movie. Right. And a new movie that is in the process of coming out. You can preview it right now for, in my opinion, too much money, but they're great people. It's called The Alien Report. And it's like this found footage sort of movie about alien abduction, but it's about this gentleman who is deaf and he wears a cochlear implant, and he decides to hide a hidden camera in there because he suspects he's getting abducted by aliens. And so you get to see what he experiences through that abduction process, and it is haunting, it's jaw-dropping, it's genuine. I was blown away by it when I saw it.
What a brilliant premise. Thank you for letting us know about that. Does the film have a working title or a title at this point, that last one?
The Alien Report.
The Alien Report. Okay. We'll be on the watch for that.
Yeah,
Mike, any special movies that deal with abduction as opposed to other areas of UFO studies or television that have particularly touched you or that feel that resonate in an honest way?
I would obviously go with Communion, just because I love Whitley and I love Christopher Walken. But it's not so much a Hollywood. It's the like TV version they produced of Bud Hopkins' Intruders. It's very different from the book, but it grasps a lot of really important parts of ufology into one like short little film, and that would be my go-to.
In 1992, I think it was, CBS came out with the miniseries Intruders, 2-hour episodes. And I remember the kind of behind scenes things that led up to the project. CBS had acquired the option to Missing Time, but the one they really wanted was Intruders, which had been optioned. And then that option ran out without the optioner doing it. So they then optioned Intruders. And then they kind of wove them together, added some stuff, none of which pleased Bud very much. But when all was said and done, for the early 90s, I think it still is very moving and quite powerful. The great character actress Mare Winningham plays our dear friend Deb White Cabell, and the Bud Hopkins / John Mack character is played by Richard Crenna. And you can find it on YouTube. It's a terrible print, but I don't think it's ever been made available in DVD. I'm not sure.
The only place I've ever been able to find it is on YouTube, and you can watch it for free, the full thing. So that's great. But like you were saying, it's not the best quality.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, everybody has become such sophisticated viewers on a certain level in terms of expecting, you know, high quality visual images that some people will burn out. But watch it. Again, I think it is very moving, very powerful. And boy, there are parts of it that still bite hard. Any special books that you guys on your own or together would recommend either that readers just read to bring them closer to some of what you were trying to make clear or communicate in Granite Skies, or that's important enough that they should add to their actual home libraries? I'm going to ask you, Nomar, for any suggestions you might have first. Again, dealing specifically with abduction and, you know, contact experiences rather than UFOs in general.
Well, I don't know if you are familiar with Brent Rains, but he's had quite the life of investigation and research, and
he sure has.
Yeah, and he's put out some very interesting books. But his latest about John Keel, I'm looking at it right here, and it's John Keel, the Man, the Myths, and the Ongoing Mysteries. And it is a fascinating read and insanely insightful work about John and about John's work. And I definitely highly recommend checking that out. There's another book that's called New England UFOs. And the author, the last name is Plum. I'm forgetting, Catherine Plum, maybe. And in that, she shares a whole host of encounters. But there's some stuff in there from like Vermont and Rhode Island that I just wasn't aware of in regards to abduction cases. And some of the stories are really short. It's almost a rewriting of newspaper articles, it seems like, but fascinating stuff. And it's one of those works I was talking about way at the beginning that give you some breadcrumbs, and then you can kind of go off on your own and find a bunch of stuff.
I will. I'm adding Brent Rains' book to my list. We've never met, but I have a lot of respect for him, and he's one of those people who has just worked and done the work, you know, and not been, you know, some prima donna or, you know, major personality. There are so many great regional researchers who are not glory seekers and can do the work decade after decade.
Yeah.
Also, I'm doubly curious about it because I knew John Keel a little. He lived in New York City, and the late great Timothy Green Beckley introduced us, I guess, in the early '80s, and
Oh,
we
wow.
used to get together sometimes, either at John's apartment or at a little neighborhood restaurant or at Tim's, and just hang out and listen to this guy. He's one in a million. Also, in your book, Nomar, Otherworldly Encounters, can you tell our viewers something about what they can find in there? Because certainly some of it qualifies in the area that I'm asking about.
Yeah, there's a plethora of abduction-related stories from New England in that book, and my main, a general focus of that book was to put out stories that have not been previously published. It was a big goal of mine, and it was tough to get witnesses to not just they came forward, that was fine, like they were receptive to our contact, but you could tell it was the first time anyone had really contacted them about their stories, other than maybe a MUFON, a New Fork, citing incident report or whatever, but not even talking to newspapers or anything. And once I started kind of getting into interviewer mode, still with non-judgmental ear, with kindness, it got a little too real for some of them, which I respected, but some of them backed off. And there were some stories I couldn't even include, or I was able to write up a sample chapter, send it to them, but put a pseudonym in there, and they would become comfortable with it. But yeah, that was just a big goal of it. So, when if somebody decides to check out that book, it's going to be a lot of stories that you haven't seen anywhere else. And, it's a little feather in my cap for that book.
Mike, over the years, which books dealing with abduction, starting with Communion, Whitley, of course, is a marvelous writer, and the film, I thought, really should have either been treated better, reached a larger audience, been more deeply appreciated. I'd watch Christopher Walken in a dog food commercial. He's one of my all-time favorite actors. And Lindsay Krause, who played Whitley's late wonderful wife, Anne. I thought they were sensational in it, and it really held very closely to the book. But besides Communion, other UFO books dealing with abduction that you would particularly recommend to readers, Mike?
Well, anything by Bud. If you're going to look at the abductions, if you just want the abduction stories, just grab anything off the shelf. Understand, like, the real part of it. Go to John Mack's Abduction. Go to Bud Hopkins, Missing Time. Everything before Intruders.
Yeah.
When, like, Bud Hopkins didn't come out and just say, "Hey, I'm a ufologist." He's like, "Hey, I'm just kind of in the middle of this, and this is happening to me," And like he really brought it to the common man, but by bringing it to the common man, he brought it like to John Mack's attention. He
That's right.
So much respect for Bud, and for you, like, for mentoring me, not to have a little fanboy moment on air, but like, you got to work with Bud, and you've always been.
Yeah. Not a day goes by that I don't think about him. And while we always miss people that we love, it's accompanied, I think, equally, hopefully, by a feeling of gratitude that we had the time we had together with him. And, we could go off on a tangent there.
You could do Mike, a bunch of shows about Bud. I also wanted to point out Ray Fowler.
Please.
I wanted to point out Ray Fowler too.
Thank you.
Andreessen account scared me probably as much as Communion did.
And the Allagash affair, also the Andreessen affair books. Holy moly! Plus, after retiring, Raymond Fowler is at work on his newest book, which he says will be his last. But so what? You're in your 80s. Bravo,
we'll
Raymond Fowler. We don't have a better chronicler. We have ones as well who do it as well. But he is also a remarkable guy and a remarkable writer as well.
A true living legend.
Yeah. Mike, throughout the pandemic time, how have you and the people that you work with in your support group moved forward together?
Slowly but steadily. I apologize. Am I echoing now? I had to ditch the headphones that the jack goes in the same hole.
No problem.
You sound fine.
All right. Yeah.
Have you been doing virtual meetings?
We had big. No, I've stayed away from that because it's not the same.
Good
I
point.
have to do that over the winter. I'm finally caved technology, but I normally who I can actually physically meet, shake your hand and look you in the eye, and
you bet.
Just know whether you're real or not. Not that I'm the almighty judge, but
No. That's a very good point. Certain things
away from the stuff as much as I can.
Well, I hope they even regularly keep in touch with each other, and that you keep in touch with them. I'm optimistic that one way or the other, as we come into this new year, with a critical mass of people having been vaccinated, other people observing social distancing, masking, all of us doing our best to keep from communicating this disease to each other, that real events will begin to return at a much more lively rate of speed. I really am optimistic about that. I'm very much looking forward to taking part in what I think will be a very important online conference, this one that we discussed at the very beginning of the show, around the marking of the anniversary of the Travis Walton abduction. But, after being pushed back for 2 years, for you and me, Mike, a double disappointment, because we love the Exeter UFO Festival and Conference so much, and it is such a unique event. Every year it's gotten bigger and more successful, and all thanks go to that wonderful group of men and women working in Rotary there, and now people in the business community who are moving in and doing more work about it. But I could almost taste it this year, how close we got. And, with the understandable terms that the city was asking us, city, whatever, was asking us to follow through on in our historic town hall there. And let's face it, if it can't be there, it can't be. That's the thing that gives us the opportunity to make it happen. And it would not only be not the same anyplace else, but we couldn't afford to do it anyplace else. So I'm very optimistic that we will be seeing each other again this coming Labor Day.
Other than that, absolutely. But more so than that, who wants to be the guy that says, "Yeah, there's time we're full," Yeah. So
Yeah.
I can't blame anybody for canceling.
Yeah. But, again, that next year, smaller groups, regional groups, meetup groups will start to be coming together again. I know some of the bigger conferences that are planned for this coming year, Roswell, the International UFO Congress in Phoenix, the MegaCon in Laughlin, Nevada, although, no, I think that's moving to Las Vegas this year, as well as the Ozarks Conference. Right now, they are all on, as is the big MUFON Symposium this summer, coming up next year in Denver. So the smaller events, the grassroots stuff will follow. I really do feel that that will be the case. Any closing thoughts before we go to the end of the show, which we are approaching at a high rate of speed, gentlemen?
Yeah, we speaking of the smaller grassroots type of events, the same weekend you guys are doing your thing, Mike and I will be attending what's called Fortean Fest, and that's in southern Maine, and we'll be there November 6th in the town of Springvale. And you can look up Fortean Fest on Facebook and get all the information. But a good friend of ours is putting it on, and it's bringing the worlds of paranormal, cryptozoology, and ufology together. And Mike and I will be talking, and I'll be presenting a documentary. And so we're excited about that. And that's Saturday, November 6th, Fortean Fest.
Outstanding. And people that go to Fortean Fest will be able to pick up inscribed copies of Granite Skies?
Absolutely.
Okay. Last and not least, Mike, I didn't ask you before, and I didn't mention, I'm sorry to say, what is your website? Is it graniteskies.com?
Graniteskies.org.
.org. Very good. And again, yours, Norm, are allmylinks.com/Slevik, SLEVIK, and slevikstore.company.site/. This has been Peter Robbins with my special guests, Mike Stevens and Nomar Slevik. And next week's guests will be, I don't know if you've heard of them, but keep your eye out for them. One Mr. Richard Dolan and one Mr. Stephen Bassett, back to our program to continue their ongoing dialogue here regularly on Meanwhile Here on Earth. And I will do my best to get these introverts out of their shells and not be stuck with 2 hours of dead airtime. If you've enjoyed the show, please tell your friends. See you next week. Stay well, stand up for what you believe in, and be kind to each other.